Hey everyone, Rodimus Prime here, and today I have an awesome video for y'all. I had the amazing opportunity to sit down and have an interview with UFC fighter Miranda Maverick. Miranda and I got to talk about a great variety of topics, ranging from Bon Jovi and 80s rock music, to Jake Paul, to fighting, to family, and to tons of other cool things. Before we get into all of that awesome stuff, I just want to quickly mention that Miranda actually has a wedding coming up. Huge congratulations to her on that. Down below in the description, I have a link to her GoFundMe. She's raising some money for her wedding, and for anyone who's willing and able to donate, the link's there for you to do it, and I know that she would really appreciate any support, no matter how big or small. Now, let's go ahead and dive into the interview. Alrighty, so wanted to basically start with how did you get into fighting, and then what made you realize that you wanted to make it a part of your career?
So I got into fighting starting at around age 16. I started at a jujitsu gym for self-defense, basically. I've been wrestling and roughhousing my entire life with my whole family, especially my dad and my two younger siblings. And instead of like most people that just like throw each other into walls and wrestle around, we were learning actual techniques. We'd watch the UFC fights, we'd go on YouTube and look up the moves, and then we'd rehearse them at home and do our best to learn there. So when I got old enough to drive my own car to a gym, I asked my dad if I could start doing jujitsu at an actual gym. And he said, yeah, sure, find a way to pay for it. And I'm all for it. So I did. I started at a gym in Springfield, Missouri, and actually transferred from that one to the one I ended up going to for the next 4 years after that, Springfield Fight Club, within a couple months, because they were a little lower tier, the one that I had started at. I like calling them it a McDojo, but I'm still thankful I started there, got used to rolling with men there, and then transitioned to a bigger gym where I started fighting. At 17, I went and watched some amateur fights of women, and I was kind of embarrassed by the display I saw. I was like, well, I can do better than that. Right. And so I started fighting myself as soon as I turned 18, which was the state requirement in Missouri. And it was only a few weeks after I'd started a striking class. I had a lot of grappling background. I was always strong for my age because of the farm work growing up and stuff. And so when I got into my fights, almost all of my amateur fights went the same way. I'd punch them maybe a couple times, but usually just run right in for a takedown and finish them with a submission.
That's awesome. All right. Well, actually, I'll mention I actually have some cousins who live in Springfield, Missouri.
Okay, there you go.
I've only been there a handful of times. It's been a while, but yeah, I do have some family who lives there.
Where do you live right now?
I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Okay, got it. And so I moved around a lot. Missouri is where my family ended up settling down. It's around Buffalo, Missouri, which is about 45 minutes north of Springfield. And then I moved to Virginia for school, and now I'm out in Colorado training and trying to finish up my career out here before I move back home.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty cool. But it's cool to get to see so many different parts of the country. So,
For sure.
definitely cool. Some cool experiences. All right. So next, I want to ask about the experience of the walkout. So whenever you're walking out, obviously it's very dramatic on TV and stuff, and I'm sure even more so in person. So what does it feel like whenever those just few minutes from when you're walking out and then you're getting prepared to step inside the octagon for your fight? What kind of thoughts are going through your head? Just walk me through that whole experience.
I think it's a little different for every single fight. When I started as an amateur, the walkout is much different, but still my very first fight, I almost blacked out. I hardly even remember what happened. The anxiety that you feel the first time you fight and the adrenaline rush that you get is undescribable. I don't think there's another sport next to it. I don't think there's another experience next to that near a life death experience, right? Because that's what it is. And that's what you think of in your head is you could be going in there to get really hurt. It's not like, oh, I lost a basketball game, right? It's, oh, I just got the crap kicked out of me, right? I have a bloody nose, I broke a limb, like now I'm gonna have to recover for 6 months to a year from one 15-minute fight, right? So it's pretty intense going in there, but the more experience you get with fighting, the less anxiety you get, the less nervousness. But anyone that says they don't have any nervousness just isn't telling the truth. A lot of people, even professionals that are now retired, are like, no, I was scared to death every time I walked in there, right? Because of the consequences that are potential. But at the same time, you have to push those out of your mind and go in with confidence and know that whatever you did for that fight camp was enough. And for me, myself, I'm a Christian, and I usually just say, give the anxiety to God. I've been through this enough times. I train leading up to every fight as hard as I can. I eat right. I do what I think is right in my mind every time, dedicating myself to the sport. So what is there to be nervous about? I'm going to go in here for 15 minutes, 17 if you count the breaks in between the rounds, and then it'll be over no matter what, whether it's a good outcome or a bad outcome. And then it'll be right back to work. Nothing in my life is going to change. The people who are important to me aren't going to change after that fight. The things that matter in life aren't going to change via one outcome.
I love that. That's an awesome way to think about it. Obviously, I've never had any kind of experience like that, but I love the way you're describing it. That sounds awesome. All right, so a little bit different, but still about fighting. What is it? Obviously, most fighters are men, and so I'm curious to know, what does it feel like to be a female fighter? I mean, I think there's definitely more stuff going on with female fights. I've seen more lately. I think there's definitely a lot going on with that, but still overall, I think there's definitely obviously more men involved. So what does it feel like being a female in a business with mostly male competitors?
I think it's pretty obvious that it's a male dominated sport. Pretty much every combat sport in the world is. It just makes sense all the way back to the historical gladiator times. You don't see any female gladiators, And just recently it started for women's MMA. The first outing of women's MMA on a worldwide screen where people actually saw it was the Ronda Rousey versus Liz Carmouche fight, the first fight in the UFC for women. And that was my first time ever seeing women fight as well. I think I was 14 years old sitting on a sofa, and my dad was like, "Hey, look, it's the first women's fight." And I was like, "What? Women do this? I didn't know women did this." And he was like, "Yeah, you could do that someday. You could be world champ. You were basically raised for this." And I was like, "No, I don't want punched in the face." And then fast forward, 3 years later, I'm having my amateur debut. So that's a pretty cool experience. But as far as being a woman growing up into this sport, I've went to several gyms throughout my career, and I've almost always been the only female, at least the only female competitor. You see the women that are doing kickboxing, hitting the bags, but nobody's out there really competing or fighting from the gyms I go to. And even when I moved to Virginia, I was the only pro fighter in Virginia for the first couple of years I lived out there. And then there was one more fighter, but they weren't my weight class. And to ever go train with another girl of my skill level, I had to travel 3 states. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. Now, not every state is like that. I moved to Colorado because it's not. I have a whole team of women fighters here, half of them being in the UFC. So that's an amazing thing. But it being mostly men, you have to earn your respect every time you go to these gyms, not necessarily in a bad way. I don't want to talk badly about the guys. I am honored that I got to train with the guys I have. All of my coaches have been men. My dad's a guy, and he helped me start in the sport. They've encouraged me the whole way. But every once in a while, you'll run into somebody that just doesn't like being beat. They have too big of an ego. They come in and try to hurt you because you're a girl trying to beat them. And you get all kinds of different looks. But it makes it harder. It makes it to where you have to find a fine line as a female of being feminine within this masculine sport, and also being able to be respected as a woman within the sport and in your own gym.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's good to hear that overall it's mostly, good experience. But yeah, I guess in a lot of ways, maybe do you feel like that kind of challenges maybe helped you in some ways too, having that kind of like feeling of maybe a little extra need to prove yourself?
No, absolutely. I think one, learning to speak up. When I don't like something or I'm having a problem with someone, I've learned over time to just nip it in the bud, go up and be like, "Hey, this dude's being a jerk. He's acting this way, he's acting that way. You need to do something about it," or going and talking to those people myself. And I think it helps in every aspect of life, whether it's a job, whether it's just out in the everyday world when you're getting disrespected, and not just as a female, as other guys too. A lot of men within the sport are driven by the respect of, can you beat me or not? And it's kind of a sad thing to see, especially in lower class gyms. Like, the guy who's respected the most is the one who can beat up everybody. And I don't think that's how it should be necessarily. Size, strength, all that stuff matters, not necessarily skill. And I think it's all about how you posture yourself, how you act yourself, and the attitude that you have. And being able to train with men has helped me just in the strength aspect, being able to deal with these men that are 160, 170 pounds for my average training partner. And then I go in and get to fight a girl who's actually my size, 135 pounds or so, and just beat them up and have no issues and being able to handle them.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. All right. So what is going to be next in the UFC for you? I don't know if there's something you can't say or anything, but do you have any fights scheduled upcoming? Are there specific fighters you'd like to fight next? I think, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure your last fight was Macy Barber, right?
My last fight was actually Erin Blanchfield. I lost that one as well. The Macy
Okay.
Barber before that one. Erin Blanchfield is another up and comer who I just fought, and she's a
Okay.
great grappler, and she was
Oh,
able
you
to.
know what? I'm sorry. I think, yeah, I remember that now. Okay. Forgive me. Yeah, but that's the last one that sticks in my brain. It was a split decision, right?
The Erin Blanchfield one, a unanimous
Well,
decision.
the Macy Barber one, right?
Yeah,
That was the controversial one. Yeah.
actually, I don't even know if it was split. I think it was all her way, but it was very, very controversial to say the least.
Yeah, yeah. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember thinking that you won. I watched that fight.
I don't know a single person, including her own teammates, that I've ran into and have said they thought she won. But it's one of those things where I'm very mad about it, but I'll have to wait a couple of years and just face her again to show how mad about it I am. As far
Extra
as
motivation.
yeah, exactly. As far as what's coming up next for me, I'm just waiting for a phone call, waiting to get another fight. I fought December 11th. I'm hoping to get on a card maybe in May. I tried to sooner than that, but there's just such a roster of girls. They're trying to get girls fights lined up, and because I fought that soon, they're just leaving me out for a little while. But I'm hoping to get in there as soon as they'll let me. I've given them a lot of names. Right now, I'll be honest, I don't want to fight a top 10, maybe not even a top 15. I want to work my way back up, be able to renegotiate my contract. After 2 losses in a row, it's a tough spot to be in, even if I don't think one of those losses is right. But I want to get in there and show my dominance again and work my way back up. Right now, I'm not even going to mention them. Molly McCann was one that I really wanted to fight, and Tonina was one that I really wanted to fight. Unfortunately, both those girls have fights lined up. So right now I'm just waiting for a name to be thrown my way.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. It's a kind of tough position. It was like I said, I remember watching that fight and I remember thinking you won. I know this must be such a hard pill to swallow, but I hope you get a good fight. You're able to work your way back up.
Yeah.
If you had just like not talking about like what could necessarily be next, but like, do you have anyone specifically like one day like that's like your dream fight? Somebody you absolutely just love to meet, even if it's not something realistic at the moment, but who like, I mean, whether it's for a title or not, who's someone you just love to fight?
I mean, Valentina, I think if anybody's in the UFC and isn't trying to get to the title fight, then there's something wrong. And for me, I'm trying to get to the title. I'm trying to get that gold around my waist. And right now, Valentina is a dominant champion. And I haven't even gotten to meet her yet. I respect her. I like her. And I've always respected her style. And I would love to fight her.
Yeah. I've seen quite a few Shevchenko fights, and yeah, it's yeah, she's definitely good to say the least. But do you think you present something different to her that other people haven't? I think her last fight was
Lauren
like,
Murphy.
who was it?
Lauren Murphy.
Yeah, I saw that fight. Yeah, it was Lauren Murphy. Then before that, was it Jennifer Maia before that?
I believe Jennifer Maia before that, Jessica Andrade before that one. Maybe
And then Caitlin Chukagian before that.
Yes.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
several title runs now to defend her belt. I think that Jennifer Maia fared the best of any of them, with her takedowns, with being able to hold Valentina, with being able to somewhat balance out the strength difference that Valentina has with most of her opponents. And I think that's the same thing that would go for me, being able to go in there not already defeated, not already scared. I've seen probably half her opponents go in there, and I feel like they just are so intimidated that they don't even look like themselves fighting. Now, I know a good fighter can change how you look fighting, they can make you look like trash, but I feel like a lot of the girls go in there going, oh, I don't want to be pushed against the cage. Oh, I don't want to be taken down. Oh, I don't want her to hit me, and end up not even sticking to their own game plan and basically fighting, backing up. And she capitalizes on that, and I would do my best to capitalize on the grappling side of things and be able to come forward and be a little bit more of a bully. And the only person she's ever had even try to bully her, in my opinion, has been Jessica Andrade, but Jessica threw a little wild during that fight and got herself in trouble on the ground.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see that you have the confidence. I think, I mean, again, obviously, I don't have this kind of experience myself, but I think just with anything in life, I think a lot of what's really important is confidence in your own abilities. So
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think you're.
confidence now, but I think in a couple of years, once I've gotten more skills and gotten the chance to work my way back up and learn more, I'm young and I'm still not even reaching my peak, but I'm working on it and I want to be able to fight her at that peak.
Yeah. Well, I sincerely hope you get to that point. I'll be cheering you on. I mean, nothing against her. I respect her a lot too. Great fighter, but I always just love rooting for underdogs, and not trying to say uh, you wouldn't have a shot at winning. I think you definitely would. But obviously, I think anyone coming up against her would be considered the underdog, and I love rooting for underdogs. So the underdog story is always so relatable. So
Yeah, it's more encouraging almost to be the underdog. At least for me, I love being the underdog in fights. And surprisingly, since I've gotten in the UFC, I don't know if I've ever been the underdog, which has been just crazy to me. But like when I am the underdog or when I feel like I'm the lesser experienced, it's always something to prove, and that just adds that much more motivation.
yeah, that's awesome. And underdog stories makes me think of Rocky.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen the Rocky movies, but kind of when he had the whole eye of the tiger, he was hungry, he wanted it. Apollo Creed maybe not as much, been champion for a while. And then the same thing ended up happening to Rocky.
Yeah.
Circle Life, Clubber Lang came in, took him out and stuff, and he had to kind of build his way back and come back and beat him. So yeah, love underdog stories. Okay.
Awesome.
So I want to switch to maybe some fun questions. Well, not that those weren't fun, obviously, but so from some of your fights, I've gotten to hear some of your walkout songs. I've noticed a lot of them are rock songs. I'm a huge rock fan myself. I love rock music. So I wanted to ask, who are some of your favorite rock bands, and do you have any songs in mind for your next walkout?
I do actually. Actually, Pete just introduced me to one. I would have to ask him what the name of it is. I don't even know the name of it, but we were listening to it for my next walkout. I like Journey. I know that's more of a kind of low tier rock band. I like all the Rocky songs. I like Bon Jovi, the typical 80s. I'm a pretty big 80s fan. If I'm running the radio in the gym, that's what I have on. I've walked out to It's My Life. I've walked out to Queen's song, Princes of the Universe. I think that one's really cool. And then I've walked out to Champion by, who is it? Carrie Underwood.
Carrie Underwood, yeah, okay. Yeah, I was wondering if that's what you meant, but yeah.
A little bit more upbeat than most of the songs that she sings, but I really like that one too. Unfortunately, Nunes has stole that one. I don't think I can walk out to that one in the UFC anymore. But yeah, I like those. And then I've tried walking out to religious songs as well. As I told you, I'm a big Christian, and the band Casting Crowns actually remixed their Only Jesus song specifically for me to walk out with. So that was a really cool experience. And they remixed it as like a Rocky tune. So that was cool.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. That was I like that. That was really cool, especially since it was like custom for you and stuff. That's so awesome. And then yeah, I didn't hear the fight with It's My Life, but I love that song. Big Bon Jovi fan. So, and just like you said, 80s. So I think our playlists are probably pretty similar.
Yeah,
But,
my husband, he goes the more heavy metal route. I hate it. Can't do it.
Yeah, I do like some metal, but for me, it's like there's a certain boundary, and once you get too much, that's not my favorite kind of stuff. So I'm probably more in your ballpark with that. But yeah, hey, if I were to give some suggestions, there's definitely plenty of Bon Jovi songs that are really good, like "You Give Love a Bad Name," stuff like that. There's Bad Medicine. There's plenty of good Bon Jovi songs.
They're all good. I just try to find one that the lyrics fit my life, and I try to walk out to whatever I feel like that fight camp.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I like the symbolism, reflecting yourself, and also like you were saying, like specific fight camps. I think that's cool, reflecting not just yourself, but also like a specific chapter of your own life. So, I like that connection. All right. So, I have to ask, since especially it's been in the media a lot lately, what do you think about Jake Paul? And what do you think about his fighting ability? And I don't know, what do you think is next for him?
I think he is a legitimate boxer. I think a lot of people, kind of threw him under the rug at first. I definitely don't think he's trying to take hard fights most of the time. He's usually just trying to pick on people to get them to kind of get defensive back and fight him. But to be honest with you, like, he's playing the game right. I see him as the Conor McGregor of the boxing world right now. And he's tormenting Dana, he's tormenting MMA fighters. But at the same time, he's right in some aspect with the whole pay thing, with the aspect of, if you come over here and fight me once, you'll get more money than you will your entire career. I mean, who can argue with that? That's true. It's the facts for just about all of us. And, anybody that wants to fight him can fight him, I suppose, even though he's a shit talker. Like, he wouldn't be able to get anywhere if it weren't for the opponent stepping up to fight him. But I think he played it smart for his attitude. I wouldn't do that myself because I just could not keep a straight face doing any of it. I'm not that kind of person to do the talking style that he is. But it's working for him. He's a good businessman in that aspect.
Yeah. Well, I think I agree with pretty much everything you said, from my perspective at least. But yeah, I find it interesting too. You definitely have a lot of people who discredit what he does, kind of like you were talking about. I was definitely interested to see what you would think, since obviously you're someone with the kind of, professional fighting background to be able to actually judge some of that kind of stuff. I can look at it and say whatever I want, but obviously it's not really, not like I would. I guess I wouldn't really know at the end of the day. So,
question: would he pass a drug test? I don't know about that one, but he does have some technique behind what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely interesting to hear, and I suspected as much. I didn't think, to be honest, he would get as far as he did. I mean, people like Tyron Woodley and Ben Askren washed up and this and that and whatever. But at the end of the day, I mean, you can't take away the fact that they're professionals. And I mean, okay, I don't care if they're like 50, 60. I mean, I would get destroyed. Any regular person would get destroyed. I figured he must have some kind of skill to be able to go in there and beat those guys, even if they're over the hill or whatever. I mean,
my thing is, everyone, no matter what happens, no matter what the excuse is of they're older, they're primarily a wrestler, or they're smaller than him, they're always going to instantly get on the side of the winner. And it's really sad being one of those people who's felt the social media backlash of being a fighter. You might be in your peak time, you might have been a champion like Woodley at some point, and then the second things go wrong for you, people go from saying how great you are and stuff to being like, oh, he's washed up anyway, he wasn't that great anyway. And I'm like, well, 5 minutes ago you were talking about how great he was and how he was the best champion and all this, but then he loses and you instantly go to the other side when you have no experience anyway. I've had experience sitting in crowds where somebody will be cheering for one of the fighters, and then 2 seconds later, as soon as they get punched hard or something, it's like, oh, never mind, they're trash, I like this guy. And I'm like, all right, you literally are the most unloyal fan, I guess you want to call them, or viewers or whatever. And I think that's how 80% of social media is. You have your very loyal fans who are going to stick by you if you win, if you lose, if you have a bad night or whatever, even if you retire from it and call it good. And then you have the people who instantly don't remember you, don't care about you. As they say, it's an unforgivable sport. It's an unforgivable world.
Yeah. I definitely see a lot of what you're talking about, all the, comments on Instagram pages and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, at least from my perspective, I definitely think it's really too bad that kind of thing happens. I mean, at the end of the day, I think, like you said, I mean, you need to be able to move past that kind of stuff. But, I've never really understood why people jump on these, bandwagons and just hating on different people for stuff. And, especially just when it gets really hateful and mean and just really, really disgusting, to be honest. So I hate seeing all that kind of stuff because I just, I always live my life just, treat other people how you want to be treated. And I just think, wow, I mean, if you're putting I don't think you belong in the UFC or in this kind of career if you don't put every ounce of your soul into it, and obviously it's like your pride and joy. And I mean, to put all that work in there just for some other person who doesn't even understand what you put into it, criticizes you. I don't understand that. And that just goes for life. I mean, everyone pours their heart into something, and have you criticize that, that's
exactly. And it's such an entertainment industry too. It's funny because we're literally doing what we do for the fans. And to even get to the UFC to begin with means you're in the top 1% to 5% of the sport. And people don't even think about that. It's like they don't even realize there is other fighting outside of it. Like fighters dream their whole life to get into the UFC, and then as soon as someone loses, going up against someone who's the exact same skill level potentially, and then discredit them. I can even say that with let's see what fight, the Jillian Robertson fight I had. I felt bad for her afterwards because people were, oh, Jillian's great, Jillian's this, I beat her, and then they're like, oh, well, Jillian wasn't that good anyway. And I'm like, you just said, like, what are you doing? One, we're both highly skilled individuals, when people are like, well, you should have finished them if you didn't want a decision, like me with the Macy fight. I'm like, well, you do realize she's world ranked as well. We're both obviously pretty tough and pretty good fighters. It's not like I can go in there and thump her on the head and she falls on the ground. Like, it's not an amateur fight anymore. We're both highly skilled. That's not a realistic thing to say, but people still say it all the time, like the whole, what's the saying? Don't let it go to the judges and you won't lose a decision. And I'm like, that's a nice thing to say. It's a nice thing to hope happens, but very unlikely once you get into the top, 50 in the world.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, annoying to hear all these people like flip-flopping and stuff, but just know you definitely do have loyal fans, and I'm a loyal fan to you and all the different UFC fighters I follow. And even if not a fan of a particular person, I would never jump on some bandwagon of hating on them and stuff like that. So just know there are good loyal fans out there always. So
Got it.
okay. So one more thing I wanted to ask about Jake Paul. So I don't know if you saw it or not, the whole Dana White diss track thing that came out a couple days ago. Do you think this whole thing he keeps talking about with fighter pay, do you think it's going to end up benefiting fighters in the UFC like yourself, perhaps?
I don't think Jake Paul will have any influence on it. I know that there's like retired fighters and stuff that share some of his things and get behind it and all of that. But Dana is well off enough. Why does he care? It's not like he's going to have a riot of every fighter that fights for him that's going to get up and say, I'm not fighting anymore and boycott it. Like, once again, regardless of how unfair the pay is, we're all still dreaming about getting in the UFC, hoping we stay in the UFC. Like, it's the ultimate career path for MMA fighters. And even though the pay is less than most professional sports, it's still one of the best out of any MMA promotions. And as unfortunate as that is, it's just a reality. And that's why I'm kind of careful not to bash it too much. Like, do I think we could be paid more? Absolutely. But at the same time, I'm very grateful for where I am.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, I think that's a good way to think about it. Especially since me can't count on something like these videos and stuff, as well intentioned or not as they may be. I think it's good that you have that mindset. But yeah, I mean,
I always get worried. It's like, well, if Dana saw this, would he just be like, well, then fire? It's like, you think about if you're the boss of a big company like that, you get the freedom to decide how much everybody gets paid. And people are still clamoring to be in the UFC. I think if they got paid $2,000, they'd still want to be in the UFC. It's just a lot of people don't do it for money. I do. I know a lot of fighters that do, but a lot just enjoy the experience too much to make them want to pay up. And I'm sure as time goes on, it'll change a little bit, but I don't think it'll be because of Jake Paul.
Yeah. Well, I find that an interesting perspective. I think, I think I agree with that. I mean, I don't see Dana White just like being like, oh, okay. I mean, from a perspective of like humor, I guess at the end of the day, whether it works or not, Jake Paul makes money off all his videos and stuff about it. But I guess at least I hope he's genuine about it. I think to a certain extent, he must be. I hope he at least, it's not just about like being funny for him, because it is funny, but I hope at the end of the day, he actually genuinely cares about the fighter pay and stuff and is actually trying to do something that helps people. Because even if it doesn't really do anything, I hope at least it's well intentioned.
Yeah, and I know it at least gets more awareness out there for it.
Yeah, is that something I didn't really realize at first when I first became a UFC fan? I mean, you have all these like NFL players who like, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes, 50 million a year, and then it's like
on the bench, then, they make millions more than we do a year a lot of the times. And like me, I have another job along with being in the UFC, and people are like, I had somebody that was like, you're asking, like, I have a wedding coming up, and I made a GoFundMe along with like a gift item thing, like a registry, I think they call it. And I was like, if you don't want to buy a gift, you can just give money. That'll help us too. And somebody was like, you're a UFC fighter and you're begging for money. And I'm like, first off, I wasn't begging for money. It's a wedding registry. Like, people do that all the time. I just posted the link separate. But also, I'm not rich. Like, no matter what the outlook may be on UFC fighters, none of us are rich unless you're a McGregor type that has 50 other businesses going on and made it big with his attitude and his persona. And there's good things and bad things that came of that in his life, and I choose to live my life a certain way and not cross certain boundaries. And if pay and finances are the last thing that go wrong for me, then so be it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I have to say that I guess I'm not surprised that so many people were kind of shocked by that, because I mean, whenever I first got into it, there's that stigma of like, oh, these professional athletes, they all make like, millions of dollars or whatever. But it's like, oh, well, not really. Honestly, actually, the vast majority probably don't. It's just in certain sports that are kind of like at the forefront of American culture, like, NFL football, NBA, stuff like that. These people make all that money, but you realize there's so many other sports like the UFC out there, and they don't, and I mean, obviously I understand it's, all economic and stuff like that based on, I mean, it's all entertainment and it's all based on how many people tune in to watch. So, I mean, McGregor makes the most money because the most people tune in to watch this pay-per-view. So, it makes sense. But I got to say, it's something that has always bothered me. It's not really like you can do anything about it, but it's like, I don't know. You got some guy in the NFL making millions, like if he's a third string, and then you got someone in the UFC going in there and doing, the kind of fights they do, getting beat up and stuff, and they're making way less than the backup, and it kind of bothers me, but oh well, I guess.
Hopefully UFC gets some bigger investors and people start betting on it more like they did boxing and made it a big sport that gets paid more.
Yeah, I hope so. And that's the other thing too, like some of these premier like boxers, I mean, they make so much money, like your Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua, all those guys. Like, it's crazy, because my guess is the vast majority of boxers are probably more like the UFC fighters with what they get paid. But it's crazy these like guys at the top get paid so much more.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, not to criticize boxing, but I mean, my favorite kind of boxing to watch is honestly just a Rocky movie. Honestly, I think MMA fights are a lot more entertaining.
That's my opinion, but I will never judge. I think each martial art and each combat sport has its fans for different reasons. And to me, boxing is one aspect of mixed martial arts, so I respect it. But it's also interesting when people only like boxing. And I'm like, I find it boring, but that's also because I am an MMA fighter. I find what I do to be entertaining. I don't really watch sports other than the UFC. So I can't really judge on that front.
Yeah. Well, that's what I always found more interesting about the UFC. You have so many different like styles. You have so many people all across the world with different kinds of martial arts that they practice. I mean, it could be boxing, kickboxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, judo, karate, whatever. I like that aspect. You combine styles, and that's what makes it so interesting for me. I mean, just as a fan watching it, it's cool.
Yeah, especially back in the day, if nobody's ever watched, UFC 1 through 5, that was crazy.
Yeah, I've only seen like a few clips. I need to go and watch that because I've heard it's incredible. So yeah, I've heard like no time limits, like no weight classes, stuff like that. That's pretty crazy.
Yep. One person walking in with wrestling shoes in, the next with a big kimono on, getting ready to sumo wrestle each other. Who knows?
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, so I want to finish with what I consider to be the most important question. So I want to ask basically just about your family. So could you just talk about, some of your various family members, who they are, what they do, and just overall what they mean to you and how they inspire your life in and out of the octagon?
Yeah, sure. So anybody that follows me knows that family is really important to me. I've said it, I'm going to say it again, like coming from a very Christian home and very home base kind of home, like my siblings were homeschooled. I would have been too, had my parents had time to homeschool me, but I ended up homeschooling them. I grew up in that very close-knit environment though. And even though I don't live close to them right now, I still talk to my family every night or every other night. And we all keep up very closely with each other and help each other out. I'm buying land connected to my dad's farm and plan on living there whenever I decide to settle down and be done with my career. My dad's the one who I give a lot of credit for how I am and who I am as a person. He taught me a lot growing up and gave me the foundation for who I am, I would say, all the way from knowing my finances and keeping my head on right to being able to have these kind of conversations, and being able to focus on end goals instead of the day-to-day life. And I know some people do that. I'm more of a, all right, here's my 20-year goals, here's my 10, here's my 5, here's my year, here's my days, and do them one step at a time until I reach those end goals. Because like MMA for me is just another means to an end. It's not the end for me. I'm doing another career at the same time. I've gotten my education to where if things go bad or I get an injury, I don't have to put all my eggs into this one basket. I get to have fun and enjoy the process and have something to lean back on. So I give him a lot of credit. He's probably my favorite human on earth. He's my hero. And then I have my 2 siblings. They're probably the next 2 most important people in my life next to my own husband, but I'll get to that in a second. I have my little brother and sister. They're both seniors in high school right now. They're both phenomenal wrestlers. We're all very good athletes. Just go look at my whole family. We're all basically built the exact same, little bodybuilder looking kids. And they're both kicking butt at that. If they wanted to be MMA fighters, they could be too. And my sister would probably beat me up within a few years. She's been learning since I started learning, which means she's basically 5 years ahead. But I don't think either one of them have a desire to do that, but that's a choice. My brother started his own business already to where he welds and does fence building and landscaping on the side, and he plans on pursuing that even more once he's out of high school. And my sister right now is helping him with that, but she's probably going to go the college route and go into criminology or something of that sort. But right now, they're both wrestlers, and my sister will probably go to college wrestling. She got second in state last year as a junior, and likely will win state this year. And then my stepmom runs a German Shepherd business. We have those at home. Some people have probably seen them all over my Instagram. They're beautiful. I have one myself. And my mom's super supportive of my fighting as well. She also lives in the Missouri area, and she's came to almost every single one of my fights except these ones since the UFC, since it's so hard to get out with all the COVID regulations. And then Pete is my husband, and I met him out in Virginia. He does like weightlifting for fun, and I finally got him to start jujitsu. So hoping he is able to defend himself against me at least in the next couple of years. And and he's he does contract work on the side, or not on the side, that's his main job. And that's about it. Hopefully in the next few years, once I'm done with my career, we'll be able to make my own business and facilitate life from there.
That's awesome. I love hearing it. I mean, for me too, same kind of thing. I family first above everything else, so it's awesome hearing about your whole family. Did you say you have a wedding coming up? Are you already married, or?
So it's kind of odd. We eloped here in Colorado, but we're wanting to have an actual wedding in October of this year. So we eloped, but we didn't have any type of celebration. Our families didn't even know about it. We called them later that day and we're like, hey, we got married, because we've been living together for a while and we just wanted to do things right, the way that we felt was right, and live together as a married couple instead of just cohabiting. And it was one of those things where we were already living married, we were already acting married, why not go ahead and do it? So we went and got married before a minister, and then we're going to actually have a wedding in front of our families and close friends in October.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. That's awesome. Did it have anything to do with like COVID stuff, like with the whole gathering, or is it just?
No, it's hard to get everybody in one place. His family's out near Pennsylvania, my family's in Missouri, and we're out here in Colorado. And money, it doesn't matter how small of a wedding you have, if there's an estimate of 20 people on each side of the family that want to come, it's just money adds up. And we didn't have it at that point, and like I said, we were already living together, and what we saw was the wrong way to live, and so we wanted to get married as soon as we could, and so we did.
Yeah, Well, I respect that 100%. That's awesome. Congratulations on the marriage, and then of course, hope that your wedding is awesome. Hope everyone gets to come. I mean, it only happens like once, so I hope everyone's able to be there for you and for your husband.
Appreciate it.
Just thank you so much for doing this. This is awesome. You know, talking to UFC fighters, so that's pretty cool. And I look forward to your next fight. I will be watching.
I appreciate it. I'll be posting as soon as I know.
All right. Well, awesome. I look forward to it. And then hopefully I look forward to seeing you as undisputed UFC champion one day.
So one day.
All right, that's the end of the interview. I hope you all enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed getting to make it. Thank you all so much for watching the video. And of course, huge thank you to Miranda Maverick for letting me do this interview. Thank you so much, Miranda, and I'll see everyone next time.